Because this is such a serious problem, NATO must first comprehend NATO members and precisely what has transpired before providing any sort of answer. A member of the NATO alliance is Poland. Concern over the possibility of an escalation beyond of Ukraine's borders has been quite high since Russia started the conflict in that country. Ukraine is not a part of Russia, the NATO alliance, or any of its allies. Since everyone is aware that a direct conflict between Russia and NATO has the potential to spark a much larger war, it must be acknowledged that great efforts have been made to avert it. Is the Third World War really so bad? This is what we're referring to. It is therefore imperative that you comprehend all that has transpired. These explosions were caused by who? And was it a planned attack? It appears that maybe not. Additionally, the NATO allies will want to consider their response after learning how it occurred. The NATO collective, unifying foundational concept that states that an assault on one is an attack on all, and that all should rise to the defense of the ally attacked, is Article 5, of course. But for Article 5 to be put into effect, all allies must concur. So that will also be important. And before anybody will be making any political decision, because calling it an Article 5 action would eventually be a political decision, all 30 member states will have to agree on the facts, including what happened, who was to blame, and why. Therefore, I don't think you'll be in a rush to make a specific decision in that regard. But that is a really severe matter, and you can tell how serious things are by the various statements they're receiving from various officials. In response to the claims, NATO released a statement from a senior official stating that we are closely collaborating with our ally Poland for Ukraine. You just said what the president said about calling this an escalation, so it's important to reiterate that. There has obviously been an increase in the situation. The question of whether it was intentional, however, will be crucial in determining how NATO will respond, and there will be some form of reaction. However, we'll have to wait to find out how that will seem. Those facts were being verified. Again, everywhere across the nation, which is considered as the Russian answer to President Zelensky's speech to the 20 people who may not be as familiar with the politics of this particular NATO alliance may find it strange to see a nation in Europe that is obviously highly aligned with the UK, with Europe, and with other European NATO allies. And yet, as you point out, this bombing is occurring in Ukraine without any NATO forces there to defend the Ukrainian people. On the other hand, this only helps to highlight how distant Ukraine is from NATO. However, NATO is not directly involved in the conflict at hand. Ukraine is not a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization at this time. As a consequence of this, it is unable to make use of the fundamental ideas of collective defense and deterrence, both of which are supported by participation in NATO. On the other hand, you have other countries, many of which are natural member states, helping Ukraine by providing it with guns and upgraded weaponry without acting on their own initiative. As a direct response to the attacks that took place today and the explosions that occurred in Poland just across the border, countries such as Latvia have already come out in support of increased air defenses. You may remember that at the beginning of the conflict, Ukraine made a request for the skies to be blocked in the hopes of convincing NATO partners to visit and defend Ukraine's airspace. At the time, countries such as the United Kingdom and the United States stated that they did not want to take that action because closing the skies would require the use of the air defense systems of NATO allies, which include fighter jets and surface to air missile systems to patrol the skies and potentially shoot down Russian aircraft and missiles. These nations stated that they did not want to take that action. And here is the direct encounter that I was talking about earlier, which both sides have been trying to avoid up to this point. As a consequence of this, as you have seen, rather than interfering directly to defend NATO's protection of Ukraine's airspace, nations like the UK have been giving Ukraine with the instruments necessary to do so. This is in place of direct intervention. They most certainly own their very own air force in addition to capability for air defense. However, over the course of the past 8.5 months, that has been noticeably strengthened as a result of the military systems that have been entering Ukraine from each and every one of NATO's members. However, this is not a NATO operation. People on their own are our allies. The United States serves as the leader of a sort of NATO contact group that has been extremely helpful to Ukraine in the way that it has assisted Ukraine, in the way that it has assisted Ukraine in protecting itself. It's true that we saw another awful bombing in Ukraine today, but things could have been a lot worse if Ukraine hadn't been supplied with the equipment it needs to protect itself. A grain storage facility in the Polish hamlet of Shiva Dove, which is close to the border with Ukraine, was reportedly hit by a missile or missiles fired from Russia. It would appear that 2 individuals have passed away. According to what we are aware, the Pentagon has claimed that it is investigating the reports that the Polish Prime Minister has called an emergency meeting due to the seeming crisis. The meeting was called because of the apparent problem. He is still trying to get information from the authorities in charge of his defense. We are aware that Hungary is also going through a situation very similar to this one. Additionally, they are convening an emergency meeting, and we are getting replies from a number of countries in both the United States and Europe. Everyone here tonight has made the observation that the terminology that has been employed in respect to what has taken place by NATO, the United States, or Europe is quite careful. And I agree with this assessment. This serves as further evidence of how tense the situation currently is. I'll give you a taste of some of the lines that have been coming out of various locales so that you can get caught up with what's going on. This will really help you get caught up. To begin, NATO has made it clear that it is investigating these allegations and is working closely with Poland, which is one of our allies, to do so. Then, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, stated that we had provided advance notice of the fact that Russia's activities were not limited to just Ukraine. According to Reuters, the Russian Ministry of Defense refutes allegations that Russian missiles were purposefully shot in the direction of Poland. It asserts that the act is a deliberate provocation that was carried out with the intention of exacerbating the situation. After that, Estonia spoke up and stated that this was a very dangerous development. The component that everyone is now focusing on is the statement that was made by the Czech Republic, which states that if Poland certifies that missiles also struck its territory, then this will be a further escalation by Russia. This is the point that everyone is paying attention to right now. Was this a premeditated attack on Poland, which, as we are all aware, has maintained a very firm posture against Russia ever since the situation in Ukraine began? Or did I make a mistake here? The conversations that are taking place behind closed doors right now will revolve around that topic. What exactly is going to take place, taking into consideration the fact that we have repeated it quite a few times over the course of the previous hour or so? The fact that Poland is a member of NATO is the primary concern in this scenario. If it becomes out that this was a premeditated attack, then conversations will take place to determine whether or not other NATO members should step in to defend this member. It won't happen immediately away, as Deborah Haynes predicted it wouldn't. There is no doubt that the question of whether or not this was the result of an accident will be raised. Was this something that the Russians would try to deny in an effort to bring things back under control? Nevertheless, these are the significant issues that are being investigated on a global scale right now. Click on these videos right here to watch more secret news you didn't hear about.